I'd like everybody to stand right now for the Pledge of Allegiance, if I could. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'll turn it over to Jim.
My apologies for being delayed. We'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everybody to tonight's zoning board meeting. Please be aware of the fire exits. In the event of a fire, please move in a calm and orderly fashion down the stairs, north or south stairs, and please do not use the elevator. Minutes are being taken by the secretary for the purpose of a record in minutes, not as a transcript of the proceedings. So when you come to the podium, please identify yourself each time. Speak into the microphone clearly and slowly. The meeting minutes are not intended to be a verbatim record, only to indicate the sum and substance of the proceedings. When you come to the podium, make sure this is a new thing. Meeting is being recorded by our ICAT department and broadcast on Spectrum Channel 1303. Board will follow the items in the order they appear on the agenda. There are extra copies on the table by the door. Once the case has been called, the applicant or their representative will come to the podium, identify themselves, state their address, pause, raise their right hand to be sworn, and then present their case. Zoning board members will have an opportunity to engage in discussions or questioning of the applicant during the presentation of their case. Once that process is completed, then the case will be open for public input. Anyone wishing to address the board regarding the application should come to the podium, identify themselves, their address, and direct any and all comments to the board, not to the applicant. We have three categories of public input. We call them in this order: those who wish to speak in favor of the application, those who wish to speak in opposition to the application, and those who'd like to talk to us about the application but are neither for it nor against it. Once the public input portion has been completed, the applicant or their representative will be given the opportunity to respond to anything that was discussed during the public input portion. Once that's completed, the hearing will be closed and we'll move on to the next case. Once all the cases have been heard, the board will take a brief recess and return to deliberate each case in the order in which they appear on the agenda and for which the applicants are still present. No further input is allowed at this point, but you're welcome to stay and listen to the deliberations. If you wish to leave, you can find out the results by calling the Planning and Zoning Department tomorrow morning after 9, or you can catch a replay of it on 1303, I think it is. 1303. All right. We can call the first case, please, on our agenda.
Mr. Hedman, would you like to add into the record to let the residents know that case number ZB 2024-09-03, I received a late email this afternoon in regarding to asking from the applicant has asked for a postponement for the meeting tonight, but all the residents are here and it was advertised as a public hearing, so I don't know if you want to continue with public hearing, if you want to discuss amongst the board and the attorney. It's up to you.
Actually, I think I'd like to discuss that with the board if we can for a moment.
Sure.
So let's All right, so after consulting with our council and the board, what we're going to do is we are going to proceed with the public hearing tonight without the applicant. We're going to allow everyone who's here to address that application to address us. And then we will keep the hearing open to our October meeting. And the same group of board members who are here tonight will continue to hear that application. Mr. Foster and Ryan Trevis are absent tonight, so they won't, since they won't be here for the public input portion tonight, they won't participate in October. At least not in the voting. Okay? All right. So then we can call the first case on the agenda.
Okay, first case on the agenda, is case number ZB 2024-09-01, where Thomas A. Jackson is seeking an area variance to allow for a reduced rear setback of 13 feet for the reconstruction of an existing attached deck on premises 419 Whipple Lane in an R2 residential district.
Hello, I'm Tom Jackson. I live at 419 Whipple Lane.
You'd raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. So you're rebuilding your deck?
Yes.
All right. And I think you said the deck has been there for 19 years?
I think so. I've been there for 10 years. I think it was about 9 or 10 years before I was there that it was built.
And if I'm looking at the survey map here correctly, your house is angled kind of to the northeast on Whipple Lane, right?
Yeah.
But if it was north and south and parallel with Whipple Lane, then you wouldn't be needing the variance, right?
Correct.
Because there's enough distance there. It's only the southwest corner of the deck that needs the variance, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you don't want to just chop off that portion of the deck?
No.
Okay.
You're actually going to be back, like we were talking, a couple inches more.
Yes.
Back
The
to-
deck is going to be attached to the house now, so it should be set back somewhere between 3 to 6 inches, the contractor told me. So to be closer to the house, away from the property line.
And then you're just going to have the lower level, right, straight
Right,
through.
the deck is now 2 levels because the difference of the levels of the exit to the garage is lower than the sliding door exit to the back of the house. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it lower, which means you'll take a step down to the deck coming out of the sliding door at the back of the house, and it'll all be the same level that's lower to the ground, even with the exit to the garage.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we'll open it up to public input. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak in favor of this application? Anyone who'd like to speak in opposition to this application? Any of us who'd like to talk about decks, houses that aren't situated in the right direction in relation to the road or anything like that? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing with respect to your case, sir. Thank you. Have a good night.
Next case on the agenda is case number ZB 2024-09-02. Sarah Rizzo Skin Spa and Boutique is seeking an area variance to allow for the increased square footage of 5 square feet for the installation of a new freestanding sign on premises 1146 Titus Avenue in an R6 residential district.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Sarah Rizzo, 1146 Titus Avenue.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Is your sign there now?
So the sign that is there now is Bloom, which is my sign, but I'm in the process of rebranding my business. So I am going for a new sign. Bob from Southpaw Designs has already drawn up a great sign, and so with this new change in rebranding, I was hoping to go a little bit bigger for better visibility. I do have some clients that have driven past the sign already and haven't been able to see it, and just really create awareness in the Irondequoit community that I'm here, we have a spa, and keep the integrity of, the beauty of all the signs and the cohesive, nice design.
In relation to where the current sign is located, where's the new sign going to be?
Exact same place.
Same place?
Yes.
This sign is just a little taller and a little wider, right?
I don't believe much taller, but just a little bit wider.
Because when you got there,
Correct.
it's hard to see. It's
Yes.
Pretty small.
Correct.
Thanks.
Yes.
Other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we'll open it up to public input. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of this application? Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Anybody who'd like to talk to us about signs or spas or anything like that? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing with respect to this case and move on to the next case. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So you want me to still read it into the record, sir?
Please.
Okay. So case number ZB 2024-09-03, McMahon LaRue Associates, acting as agent for 43 North Real Estate, is seeking area variances to allow for a reduced side setback of 0 feet and reduced off-street parking requirement for the redevelopment of existing building into 22 apartments and 6,000 square foot of commercial space on premises of 4530 St. Paul Boulevard, otherwise known as 41 Colebrook Drive, in an R1 residential district.
All right. Seeing as how the applicant is not here to present anything to us tonight because they've asked for an adjournment, which they need apparently to finalize, I guess, their parking calculations or something like that.
Correct.
All right. And they didn't phone in that or email that request until after 5 o'clock, so nobody would really be able to learn that. And there's a number of people who are here who wish to speak to this application. So what we're going to do is, we're not going to have an applicant's presentation, but we're going to listen to whatever it is that all of you who've come out tonight to spend time with us want to share with us. And then we will table this case till next month. And between now and next month, the applicant will be instructed that they need to review all of the input that was presented to us tonight. And any members of the board who aren't here tonight and wish to be involved will be instructed to do the same thing, so that your input will be considered as part of this application when this application is determined. It will not be necessary for you to return next month to tell us what you tell us tonight, but you're always welcome to come and spend time with us while you wait for whoever's playing on Monday night a few weeks from now to start. So, since we have no applicant and no presentation, we'll open up to public input. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of this application? It's kind of what I figured. Those who wish to speak in opposition to this application, if you could line up on the far side and then come up to the podium one at a time. Again, it is not necessary for you as part of the public input to be sworn. Your input is not something that is needed to be sworn like the applicants. First, I think we have Mr. Zoglin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for allowing the public to provide comment today, even though the applicant wasn't here to present. I appreciate that. Good evening.
Well, we appreciate the fact that people take time out of their busy lives and their schedules to come and talk to us about things that are of concern to them in the town. And we're here to hear that. You may not always agree with everything that we do, but we do take it into account, and we do want to hear what people have to say before we make decisions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, my name is Jacob Zoglin. I'm an attorney and partner at the Zoglin Group here in Rochester, and I'm here tonight on behalf of Denise Flanagan in opposition to 43 North Real Estate's area variances application. So jumping right to it, the developer has not met its burden, and so this application should be denied because the benefit to the applicant if the variance is granted is outweighed by the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community that such variances would cause. That's the standard here. In determining whether the benefit of the variance outweighs its detriment, the law commands the ZBA to consider 5 factors and apply a balancing test. You know this. The first factor here weighs against the variance because the project will produce an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to nearby properties.
Oh, let me ask you a question about that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because what's in front of us is 2 requests for variances. One is to allow for less parking spaces than might otherwise be required by the code,
That's correct.
and the other is to allow for a 0 setback on, I think it's only a portion of the west side of the building, to preserve the breezeway.
It's an
So,
elimination.
so the question is, I understand that your position is that converting this to apartments has a detrimental effect on the neighborhood. You've argued that, and we've heard that before, but this board made a decision to allow that. So I'm asking how the parking spaces and the 0 setback request alter the character of the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will answer that exactly. It seeks to allow those uses which are the higher density, higher intensity multifamily apartments, as well as I think they increased it from 5,000 from your last use variance up to 6,000, which was not approved for commercial use. So by seeking to move those more dense and more intensive uses closer to the lower intensity and less dense non-commercial uses with the 0 foot side yard setback, as well as subjecting those uses to 60% fewer required parking spaces than the code requires, causes an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood.
The parking spaces and the 0 setback, I mean, I understand your argument that these facilitate a higher dense usage, but that issue was resolved and is now, as I understand it, in front of the court.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, the issue of their proximity, of allowing those uses to be closer and allowing them to have less parking was not addressed during the use variance application.
Well, that's true, but the density was.
For 5,000, but the application is increased to 6,000.
Well, we didn't approve 6,000.
Exactly right, you
Right,
didn't.
we've only approved 5,000.
So their application is already, supposing additional non-conforming conditions.
Well, I think they would need to request that, since we didn't approve that. And I understand this application to be made in the context of the decision that was made previously. So that would be in the context of the number of apartments and the 5,000 as opposed to 6,000 feet that they requested that this board approved.
Well, the application says 6, it doesn't say 5, so I'll leave it to the ZBA to decide whether that creates another non-conforming condition. As to the second area variance factor, it also weighs against the variance because the benefit sought by this application is just code compliance. They're trying to legalize their application by saying, hey, will you get us a variance for the breezeway and the parking? But you don't need a variance to get code compliance for the breezeway. You can just knock down the breezeway. The developer has stated as much in their application that if you deny the application, they'll get the benefit they want by just demolishing it, the breezeway, and that's exactly what they're supposed to do under these circumstances. They're not supposed to seek an area variance for something where they can obtain the benefit without a variance, but for another feasible means. Demolishing the breezeway is definitely feasible, and there's no claim to the contrary. Moreover, an area variance isn't necessary to screen the parking lot because you can do other things that don't require a variance for screening. You can, put up trees, shrubs, or other screening materials. So for those reasons, this factor also weighs against a variance.
Wouldn't an easement concerning or some kind of agreement concerning the breezeway also eliminate that issue, potentially?
Can you explain a little bit more what you mean?
Well, if the applicant chooses to leave the breezeway intact, isn't there some kind of an agreement that could be entered into with whoever it is? It's not the diocese, it's somebody else that owns the church that would allow for mutual use of it?
No, because it's the town code issue that
Okay.
they're seeking relief from, not from some property right of the diocese. They're
Okay.
seeking relief from the town code's requirement that they have a 15-foot side yard setback in this district.
Okay.
And then going on to the third factor, this also weighs against granting the variance because the variances sought here are extremely substantial. In considering what makes a variance substantial, courts consider the number of variances sought, the percentage of relief from the code sought, the district in which they're sought, and the cumulative impacts of the relief requested. This side yard setback is undeniably substantial because it seeks 100% reduction, complete elimination of the side yard setback. So that's below what's required, from 15 feet to 0. And the parking variance is also substantial because it seeks about a 60% reduction in the number of minimum required parking spaces below what the code requires, from about 506 to 204. I provide in our submissions a number of cases demonstrating that issues like that are, variances like that are substantial. I won't repeat it for you.
But I'm confused about the 500 and the 204 because as I looked at their submission, that there's 50 spaces in their lot, as I see it laid out on the map. It appeared to me that it's laid out into, I think, 4 lots, 3 lots. One lot being lot 1 being the existing church building and a lot of, to the west, to the south, and to the east. And lot 2 being, as I see it, separated out into a lot by itself. And then lot 1 being the rectory that continues with the other parking and the other in those. So it looks like the boundary of the lot 1 only encompasses 50 parking spaces.
If I could direct Mr. Chairman to the parking variance plan submitted with this application.
Well, I saw that. That didn't make sense to me, though.
I'm going to direct you to a specific portion.
Okay.
It's really hard to read, but it's under the parking data, proposed uses. It has a total required, it says 506, and total site spaces 204. So by their own calculation, I'm showing you, they are below by 300.
More than half.
Yeah, by more than half, 302.
I saw all that, but in looking at the map, I'm trying to figure out this 200 or whatever spaces it is seems to include all of the spaces that are delineated in lot 1, in addition to the 50 spaces that are in lot 2.
So I think I understand your question, which is, are they trying to use cross access to satisfy
Well,
requirements?
I don't know, because they're not here to tell me.
You're right. They're trying to do that. I have submitted letters to the town, which I include in my submission, that explain how the town code does not allow the use of off-property parking to satisfy the requirements for a separate property.
All right, but
They're also.
I guess my question is, using their figures, under the school, they're coming up with 120 spaces, but then under proposed uses, 21 apartments, 42 spaces, and the commercial area, misstated, 27 for a total of 69, and they're asking for 50.
There's a lot of inaccuracies in the parking data here, including the fact that the fire marshal recently determined that the total occupancy for the church is, I think it's 1148, and the required minimum number of parking spaces for a church is the maximum occupancy divided by 3. And, that's
about 400 spaces for the church alone.
yeah, so they don't have enough even for the church, let alone for the entire project.
Okay.
Do you have more questions about that? I want to make sure I address your concern.
No, I just I have a stream of consciousnesses, I think, and then I just throw them out there for you.
That's fine with me.
All right.
I keep wanting to say Your Honor because I feel like
No,
it's before, but Mr.
No,
Chairman.
No, that's fine.
But just for, a point of context, courts have held that much smaller variances are substantial, including exceeding lot coverage by only 15% or reducing required parking spaces by 50. So if we use those as points of comparison, the two larger variances sought here, in an R1 district no less, are clearly substantial, and so this factor should weigh against the application. On the fourth factor, that also weighs against the variance because the project will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. The argument here is similar to one from earlier, so I can go through it again. Essentially, the requested side yard setback area variance, whose impacts were never considered when the developer sought and received its use variance, will exacerbate the adverse impacts from the use variance by undeniably allowing those uses to be closer to the lower impact pre-existing uses that are not commercial, and allowing a direct physical and structural connection between different buildings with different uses. This will erode the intended buffer between the higher density commercial and the lower density non-commercial uses than was contemplated by the town code or the comprehensive master plan, accelerating the deterioration of this community's character. Likewise, the area variance to reduce required parking spaces to about 60% below what's required will burden the community, be a detriment to nearby properties, and therefore have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions. It's going to force the traffic that's going to be displaced here out into the surrounding neighborhoods, onto St. Paul Boulevard, where it could conceivably further obstruct traffic and create safety issues. Again, this factor is going to weigh against the application. Finally, the fifth factor, I think this one's pretty clear. It weighs against the variance because the alleged difficulty is obviously self-created. There's always a presumption of self-created hardship where you purchase a property that has non-conforming issues with knowledge of those non-conforming issues, which is what happened here.
Have they purchased the property?
Well, they're under contract to purchase it with knowledge of the non-conforming issues.
But
And
doesn't the contract, I would suspect, say that it's contingent upon them getting approval for the variances that they need in order to go forward?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm not a party to their contract, but they did admit last time they were before the ZBA that their hardship was self-created. So if,
Well, I'm not taking issue with that part.
Right. Moreover, the applicant's own actions in applying for subdivision approval for this property have directly and foreseeably caused the exact hardship that they're now before this board to seek relief from, which is the 0-foot setback and the parking issues. So again, they're creating the very hardships that they're seeking relief from. For these reasons, each of the 5 factors weigh against the application, and so the developer hasn't met his burden of proof, which is he needs to prove that the benefit to the applicant if the variance is granted outweighs the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community. This application doesn't meet that high bar. The one last point that I wanted to make tonight is that this board cannot approve the application until seeker has been completed. And because the planning board both has broader review authority and already has applications concerning this project pending, I would just encourage the ZBA to participate in the seeker review with the planning board acting as lead agency. So for these reasons and those stated in our public
They are
comment
doing
letter-
that? Is that correct? They're acting as the lead agency on the seeker?
I would encourage, may I respond?
Yeah.
Okay. I believe they tabled that or adjourned it because they knew an application was coming to you guys.
Okay.
I don't believe that they have sent out coordinated review letters yet because you would have received one. But so what I believe is based on the fact that there are 2 applications pending there and that they have pretty broad review authority doing both site plan and subdivision approval, that it would make sense to allow them to act as lead agency for the coordinated review, just based on.
We generally don't have a problem with someone else taking on a job.
That makes sense, yeah. Helps you get out of here a little bit earlier in the evenings, I'd hope. And for the reasons stated herein, as well as the reasons stated in the submission that I provided, I'm sorry it was so late in the day that it got to you guys, we ask you to deny the application.
Oh, you had another submission to us today?
Yes, Mr. Hinman, it came in towards the end of the day. And because it came in towards the end of the day, I did want to offer a courtesy hard copy.
Because I didn't see it, so if you could.
Sir, it came in at 417 and it's
Right.
172 pages, and I did not have time to print out hard copies for each board member.
Yeah, I'm sure you didn't. All right.
So I would be happy to address any concerns or questions that the board may have. If not, then I'll let the rest of the public provide comments.
I did have one other question for you. You were arguing about traffic that would be pushed out onto the roads. Is that from this property or from the 1,100 capacity at the church?
My argument is that would be a result of approving the application, which would result in the reduction in parking and all the other things discussed. Does that
All
make
right.
sense?
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Okay. Thank you for hearing us again.
You're very welcome. And the reason I didn't cut him off, Michelle, was because I had spent time engaging in discussion with him.
I kept hitting the,
Kept hitting the recycle?
I kept
Okay.
giving a couple extra
All
because
right.
you were.
Don't all sit back there. You just get right up.
I'm Virginia Maurer, and I live at 203 Pinecrest Drive, which is the first street right next to St. Thomas the Apostle. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of your time, but I just want to clarify some of the stuff that Joel sent. Since I just did the census for this weekend, he said the maximum church attendance was 225. This weekend, it was 379, and that does not include children. We also have weddings and funerals. He said it's only used on Sunday. We do have very large funerals. Unfortunately, my niece did pass away last year, God rest her soul. She was 34 years old. There were 700 people, and they were all at St. Thomas. So a couple other clarifications. I just wanted to point out, he wrote a lovely letter about the variance on the causeway or bridgeway, that the neighbors wouldn't have to see the parking lot. But his plan includes a parking lot, a reduction of green space, and mature trees right off St. Paul Boulevard, which would be on the south side of the church. Now, from the town line all the way down to Don's Deli, there isn't a parking lot that's visible on St. Paul Boulevard except for Seneca Park School. So if you approve his plan, you're approving a parking lot off St. Paul, which I believe is our jewel, and everybody walks that. And I don't believe the neighbors are aware. I mean, they think this all concerns the school and the existing parking lot. I don't think they're aware of the fact that we're talking about reduced green space and reduced mature trees. And basically, and I don't mean this as a judgment, but Titus Avenue is one big parking lot from the Credit Bureau all the way down to the Irondequoit Brewery. Do we really want to start putting parking lots right off St. Paul Boulevard? That's just my opinion. And I just think
I'm confused about the loss of green space that you're talking about because
if you look at the plan,
Yeah.
on the south side of the church, there's an entrance from St. Paul Boulevard.
right, the semicircular drive.
No, that's off St. Paul Boulevard. There is a driveway that goes from St. Paul into the large parking lot.
Over to Washington.
No, that's the other parking lot by the school. It goes from St. Paul Boulevard down into the large parking lot, which feeds the school in the parish center. Okay?
Okay.
I believe she's talking about the banked area.
Right now, that's
Those
all
30
grass and green
Parking
trees.
spaces are banked.
Oh, is that,
That's in a green area.
okay, all right.
Okay, so
I see
he's
now.
going to take down the mature trees, and he's going to put in, last time he spoke, it was somewhere between 16 and 22 parking spots right outside the entrance, which currently is used by the parish. We use that space for functions. That is our, I also want to point out he's tucked away parking spots like behind the garage. He's tucked a few in front of the, but none of that is really accessible. I mean, it's great. I don't think his people or his guests are gonna park behind the garage and walk 200 feet through a snowy parking lot to get to their luxury apartments. It'll end up the church people, if you want to call us, and then really, who wants to park back there with all the snow? And so it will funnel out to St. Paul Boulevard in Colebrook. The parking lot is used during the week for meetings. There's the Adoration Chapel. The parents from Iroquois park in the parking lot. Their kids walk down, meet their parents in the parking lot. So this is just not a dead space during the week, and that's all I wanted to say. But please, 379 people at church on Sunday. We do have weddings and funerals, and you're reducing our green space. And I think the neighbors should know before you approve it. At least the ones on St. Paul Boulevard should know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kim DiProgetto. I live at 4559 St. Paul Boulevard, and I face the church, and I see what goes on over there on a daily basis, and we have a lot of traffic. I don't know that anybody here is very familiar with the area. I've said it before, sometimes they're either coming from, right now they're doing work at Iroquois School, in Colebrook down here. They have 18-wheeler trucks with big contraptions on them. We have parents parked on the side road. Every single Sunday, I can tell you that side street Colebrook has cars all down it. There's not enough parking in the parking lot that they're parked on the side and in the circle. I have pictures on my phone even of when they're having church weddings. They use that whole side yard up along Colebrook. They use the other. I mean, this is the parish's property. And for the neighbors, I can tell you right now, my neighbors don't know anything that's going on. I mean, a few of us got notices, and I don't believe the private drive's ever been aware. My next door neighbor isn't aware. I mean, there's a lot of people, because I've been coming, I think that's the only reason I've probably gotten a cardigan. But there are those side streets all around, those people are going to be affected. And I can tell you, I've lived there for 20 years. The increase in young families with children walking that is increased too. I have to say, in the last year to 2 years, many young families are moving into the community with young children walking to school. I just think that increased traffic is going to be a burden on that whole area. It really is going to, I don't even know how you can even think about it when you have to see Sundays and how they're parking. All along Colebrook, on the sides. I mean, I'm over there walking. People walk through there. It's a beautiful area, and I just can't understand why you would want to put apartments into that area. And I don't believe, in my heart of hearts, that putting all those air conditioning units on the top is going to be quiet. Those neighbors across the street are going to hear it. And, I mean, these people have lived there for how many years of their life? We live in the neighborhood. We love the neighborhood. I'm sure a lot of you who live in your homes wouldn't want to be sitting across the street from 20-something apartments and have that whole area, that whole neighborhood changed. That character is something to preserve and think about it, because I'll tell you, when you do go up to Titus Avenue, it's crazy. I've even said to my grandkids, now we have DMV next to the liquor. I mean, everything keeps changing, and sometimes not for the better. I mean, sometimes I just don't see, we're putting things where they don't belong and letting other things go, and I just think that this is something that you guys really need to consider. If you had it in your backyard, I don't know what you'd feel either. And as she said, I don't think a lot of the community knows exactly what's going on here. It's really sad. I hope you really give it some consideration.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Marie D'Amico Ramsey from 116 Pinecrest Drive. Okay, I swear it's the truth.
No, your public input is not sworn. It's because you're expressing your opinions, your views, and while the board takes those into account, we don't rely on them. Like we do applicant statements, and the sworn requirement came into being because we had an applicant who gave us information that we relied on in granting relief, only to find out that the information he gave us was at best not completely accurate, and at worst, false. And there was no remedy for us to deal with the applicant.
That does explain it, thank you. So my house is approximately 2/10 of a mile up on Pinecrest. And in the discussions of the limitations to be put on the parking, it occurred to me that this rather usurps the code in terms of safety issues. The limitation of parking has to do with the number of people that fit into the church. And so now we'd have this artificial constraint as to how many people could attend church if they wanted to, because there's not going to be enough parking. So as the diocese continues to be in financial distress, we anticipate and hear that other churches will be closing. It wouldn't be improbable that those individuals would want to continue to practice their faith and go and attend St. Thomas, and also new members coming into St. Thomas Parish as new families come in, and they're having children, and that was somebody spoke at the last hearing about that. So the constraint of parking spaces, the severe reduction, really reduces the number of people that can attend the church. And I think that's a serious consideration because it nullifies the benefit of having the church there, and it hastens the closing of the church if they can't have proper attendance. I think that's a serious consideration also because the practice of one's faith is very integral to the community life and the community spirit. And there are many people that attend St. Thomas that come from other than just the couple of blocks that surround it. So especially the Latin Mass, because it is the only one in the diocese. So I would say that this applicant's request should not be granted because it limits artificially the people attendance at the church, and it constrains it in a way that really is a detriment to the practice of the faith and to the community which wants to celebrate together. The other thing is, I had mentioned at the last hearing my concerns about the sewer system and the stress on the system. I haven't seen that addressed by the applicant, and I don't know if they followed through with the Monroe County DOT, Department of Environmental Services testing, but there has been problems there, and I've never seen in a follow-up application, this one or any other, that's a concern, especially since the proposal initially was going to be for single person occupancy per apartment, and now it's multiple person occupancy. So if somewhere along the line the board could address that concern or point me to documentation that addressed it from any other thing on file or from any other agency, I'd appreciate that.
Understood and appreciated. Just want to reiterate that the only thing that this board will be considering at this point is a setback variance, that 15 feet to 0 feet variance that the applicant has requested, as well as the reduction in parking. So, all the other things, community character, insofar as they don't relate to, the reduction in parking or, the sewer system on the site are not really things that will be germane to this board.
I think the planning board would be the board that would have the information you're looking for. Site plan review, right.
Okay.
I don't
would
exactly
ju-
understand everything that they do in site plan review, but I know they do most of the stuff that people come to us and talk about that we don't know anything about.
Okay. I would say that, you know, the concern for off-street parking really does affect, is a result of the reduction in parking spaces there and does affect the character of the neighborhood. And, you know, we have winter 8 months of a year where we can't park on the streets. And, you know, I think the off-street parking really does affect the character of the neighborhood. And that's something that results from a reduction in the parking spaces. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Denise Flanagan, 698 List Avenue. One of the things that caught my eye with the applicant's application to you was the fact that they were dictating what the attendance was at the church. And it seems that they are talking about our parking requirements in terms of our current attendance, but yet they don't talk about their own parking requirements in terms of potential business uses, which they don't have. They're only talking apartments now, but they have the commercial businesses, none of which have been identified, but they're choosing to include in their count the number of spots they need according to the town code. So how is it that they can dictate the church's parking requirements based on attendance? And as Marie pointed out, actually ultimately impact our ability to grow. And we are a growing community. Again, as Marie pointed out, it's the only place in the diocese right now that it's offering a Latin Mass, which is very unique. It's drawing not only in Rochester, but across the country. A lot of young people are interested in this particular Mass. Our parking and our attendance records show that 43 North has underestimated the actual parking needs and attendance that the applicant quoted in the application. Let's see what else we got here. The Diocese of Rochester is considering closing more churches because everybody knows there's some financial difficulties, there's underutilized buildings, but in allowing this application to go forth, especially with the parking, it is going to put a dent in our ability to grow, thereby making us a target for future closure. Given that, no other church or denomination would probably want to buy the church because they would be faced with the same parking requirements. That would only open up the entire property to further development, potentially multi-use dwellings in the church itself, or as I've done a search through some major cities in the Northeast United States, some big Gothic Catholic churches have been converted into breweries. So the ZBA awarded the past variance allowing for the commercial business. I think it's just a hop, skip, and a jump that if the church itself got closed, it would open up more, which would go to change the character of the building. But the immediate concern is the parking. Why is it that the applicant can take the prime parking that we're using and we go from the church to the parish center where our children are educated, kids are going through their parking lot, now we're making families go to the southern part of the parking lot. Let's see. If an applicant came before the zoning board today to build a brand-new 1,148-seat church, would the zoning board grant the application the use of a parking lot that did not satisfy the potential with a brand-new church? And if the answer is no, then it should not allow the applicant to reduce our parking. Let's see. As Ginny pointed out, we do utilize other days of the week, and I think for the applicant to state to you that we only utilize the property on Sunday is a falsehood. I don't know where the applicant is getting that information. Regarding some other things, I wonder why there's no variance required for increasing the height of the building, because the applicant is talking about extending the height of the building by making two-story apartments on the second floor and adding the second floor of these apartments on the roof of the building. Also, the eastern boundary of the Lot 2 follows the Colebrook driveway, but before it even gets to the main parking lot, it takes a turn to widen before it gets to the main parking lot, going into the church property. So I don't understand why that eastern boundary has to extend on part of our green space. As far as the western boundary goes, it includes the southern exit of the breezeway. The southern exit of the breezeway is actually visually more attached to the church than it is to the school. The northern exit of the breezeway is diagonal from the southern exit, so that is more part of the school. So why the applicant can actually widen its western boundary there is a little bit perplexing. It kind of makes a dead space in the breezeway from the church, like we couldn't even use the exit. And then, let's see, I think that's about it. I've also brought several pictures of the parking lot, which I'm going to pass to everybody. We have a lot more pictures than this, but we do use that main area. And as far as that bank parking is concerned, to change that green space into parking, not only is it not pretty, it also is dangerous because there's a proposal for dumping snow there. So I could see little kids coming. They play on the lawn right now when they come out of Mass. They'd be climbing up there. It would be a dangerous entrance and exit for the church because those parking spots are perpendicular right to the main driveway of the church. I've also am submitting a letter that I wrote with two other people. We submitted to the planning board that shows statistics of our parking and our attendance and how we're a growing community, and the data that the applicant provided is just not accurate. I'll just give you the pictures.
Thank you.
I just gave you pictures that.
Okay, so I would add that to this.
Good evening.
Can we just pause for one quick second, please? Thank you. I want to mark this. Then they'll give me the.
Christine's gonna talk Pasco.
Eugene Michael, 181 Daly Boulevard in Arundecoit. I'm also a parishioner at St. Thomas. One quick question, will there be public comment at the next meeting when the developer is here, assuming he's going to make some changes to the information we already have? I would like to be able to comment on any further developments. So will there be public comment at the next meeting?
As I indicated, we're going to be keeping the public hearing open, so we'll hear from the applicant, presumably next month, and then it'll be continued to be open to public input at that point. So,
Okay, thank you. I want to talk about the parking. And the issue with the parking is the developer has been given the authority by Father Gagno, the pastor, to apply for any variances or permits. And that's why you have all this information from the developer on parking and nothing from the pastor, who actually has governance over the property. The developer has a vested interest in distorting the parking information to try to make it look as if things are different than what they really are, and that's been demonstrated already somewhat. But specifically, I'll read to you what he said in his letter, which I believe was dated August 4th, was to the zoning board. It says, this is from Joel, "It is also important to note that the parking lot is greatly underutilized by the property's sole tenant. Number one, we are not a tenant. We're members of St. Catherine Parish. Our pastor is Father Gagno. Our chaplain is Father Bonsignori. We have a chaplain because we have the Latin Mass. It's the only Latin Mass in the Diocese of Rochester, and not every priest is able to say that liturgy. So to straighten that out, we're not tenants. We are full-fledged parishioners." So it goes on to say the sole tenant who uses the lot on Sunday only, again, Denise said, that's not true. Jenny said, not true. We have meetings throughout the week on that property. It's not Sunday only. And this is the weakness of letting somebody give you information who has no idea what they're talking about, and it's wrong. He goes on to say in his letter to you that there's a maximum attendance at peak services of approximately 225 parishioners at Christmas and Easter. Again, this is not true. Our peak attendance is more than that, and especially weddings and funerals. We've had a funeral last year with 700 people there. So that's another false statement. He goes on to say, Joel goes on to say that we only need 75 to 100 parking spaces. Okay. With a 1,200-seat church, we're supposed to have 400. He's saying we only need 100. This is a fox guarding the hen house. The statements he's making are so far off. I wish he was here tonight, but I hope he addresses this at the next meeting. So what I'll say to all this information from the developer does not take into account there's 2 masses there on Sunday. There's a crossover between the masses, and cars from both services are there at the same time because we have a Sunday school with 80 students. So those cars from 9 o'clock stay, and then the cars are coming in for the next service. They're there at the same time. So to take one mass and say there's only 200, it's false. The funerals and the weddings, of course, the meetings, they want to leave us with 154 spaces. I know it's confusing, Mr. Hinman, what you were reading. It was confusing to me until I read it and read it and read it. They want to leave us with 154 and then 19 spaces that are shared. That's what they want to leave us with. We've done actual counts of the parking there on Sunday. Recently, there was a count. There were 153 cars there between services. And that was on, I think, in June. So the church school was still there. So they want to give us 154 spaces, and we can demonstrate to you, and those counts I believe you have were submitted to you before this process started, that we've had incidents there pretty regularly where there's well over 100 spaces. So 153 is cutting it pretty close. I'm going to just finish with a statement that Jacob put in his letter because I think it's important to highlight this, and this is from Jacob's letter that you just received. Quote, "The developer's false statements to the town regarding the church's maximum capacity and the minimum number of parking spaces required has interfered with the town's ability to consider the extent of the project's impacts on parking and traffic, to reduce and mitigate those impacts, and to consider how those factors impact the community, neighborhood, and surrounding properties in making decisions on the developer's applications. The developer's shifting narrative is starting to look like a bait and switch or an attempt to evade the requirements of SECRA and is harming the developer's credibility with the community and the town. The incorrect and changing information in the developer's various applications for this project undermine its reliability and suggest that the town should carefully scrutinize the applicant's claims and indicate substantial project changes that may warrant reconsidering prior approvals issued for this project." Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
As I understand it, I'll have another 5 minutes at the next meeting.
As I said, we're continuing, the public hearing is going to remain open. The applicant will speak at the October meeting, assuming the applicant is here and doesn't adjourn it again. And the public hearing will continue to open, and after the applicant has addressed, then everybody will have an opportunity to say what they want. But
I have some other things.
you came tonight expecting to speak tonight, and even though we could have just said, well, the applicant's adjourned the case, so we're not going to consider it, and you can all go home and come back next October, or in October, but we didn't want to do that to you.
Thank you. I just have a few more things that were already covered. We gave
Mr. O'Connor, state your name and address for the
Daniel
record,
O'Connor.
please.
37 Barron's Road, 5 or 6 blocks from here, 6 or 7 blocks, I guess. We gave actual counts of parking for several months to the planning board. They were given to 43 North. You can see the go-around at that time that they got that information. I don't understand why they're using information or numbers that are completely different than what we gave them. There's no reason for that. They state that the maximum parking space requirement is 100. In that period of the readings that we gave you, only 2 readings were less than 100. The highs were 160, 144, 143, and 142. The average was 129. His statement is completely false.
Just so I'm clear, Mr. O'Connor, these are the number of spaces that are utilized during the services on Sunday? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You don't have those? You haven't seen those?
No, that information apparently was given to the planning board.
But I sent it to you last week also.
Oh, we did? You saw it? Was this in an email? Yeah, that's why I missed it. Yeah, all right. I'll look at it when I see it.
Thank you. He says that the attendance data is around 225 peak attendance. I've seen 305. For 19 weeks, it was higher than 225. The talk about increase in attendance, the information I gave you showed that there was a 9.5% annual increase since 2018 to 2024. That's in there with the calculations. But the big question is, why are we talking about numbers that are being used? The code says that you shall not take parking spaces away from one facility and use it at another facility. There has been no discussion about that issue at all. Why are we talking about something that doesn't cover the code?
The short answer to that is that he's asking to be excused from what the code says. That's what a variance is.
He's not asking that.
Yes, he is.
Where does he say that?
He's asking to have the spots approved, I think it's 50, instead of the number that would be required under the code. So he's not saying I'm taking spots from other places. He's saying I'm going to have 50 spaces, and the code requires 67 or some other figure that he's calculating, and he's asking to be excused from that, which is what a variance is.
But you're not looking at the code that says you shouldn't take any spaces from the church.
He's not asking us to approve him taking spaces from the church. He's asking us to improve the lot as it's laid out that has 50 proposed spaces that will be attached to that building as part of that property.
Which
Now,
will take spaces from the church.
well, but it will take spaces from the church the same way that the school is being taken from the church, and the surrounding property, as it shows on the plat, is being taken from the church. And it's only that portion of what was the larger church property, and still is until it's actually sold. He's not taking spaces from that once this lot is separated out. He's looking at it solely within the confines of the lot that includes the school. And he's asking us to excuse compliance with the code.
You have not convinced me.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Anyone else like to speak in opposition to the app? Step right up. Just please keep coming.
Good evening. I'm Christine Vargas, 824 Houston Road in Webster. Regarding the parking, I just want to continue to identify the ongoing increases in not only our attendance, which is documented in the document to the planning board at 9% year over year, tracked over 6 years. But as a whole, traditional Latin Mass increases have been going up across the country. Okay, I found one statistic that documented January 2020 to 2021, an increase of 34%. And I'm sure that's a little bit high because of the timing, but this is not going away. This is going to increase. And if we do not have the parking lot, it will start infringing on religious rights to go and attend Mass when you can't find a parking lot or a space at the parking lot. So year over year, if you were to take that parking lot and see where we are today and add 9% year over year, we will be running out of spaces. And it's not just the Mass, it's the overlap that Jean was referring to, because we've got a 9 o'clock Mass and an 11:15 Mass, and there's faith formation in between, and you've got an overlap of families that are coming from both. There are so many families, so many young children. This trend is going to continue to grow, and as other churches close, I do fully expect that we're going to pick up some of those people that attend. I did bring a chart that identifies our attendance that we have tracked over the last several years, and it does demonstrate a trend upward, so I will submit this for your review and approval. And I just want to say one thing that is not parking related. At the end of the last open meeting that we had, after there was a decision to allow the developer to proceed, which is now in appeal, a comment was made by one of the board members that was in response to our desire to see St. John Bosco School go to this school building. And it was that they were afraid that, we expressed that we'd raised close to the amount of money needed for purchasing the building. It was roughly shy of $500,000, $500,000. And a comment was made that, well, how do we know the building won't just be built or purchased and then it just sits there and it goes, into more disrepair? That school is continuing to grow. They're busting at the seams. They are doing everything right, and they are completely out of space. So the more they wait for a potential opportunity to result here, they're going to find something else, and this would be a huge loss for the town of Arundecoit. What do we need to do to demonstrate that we have a huge viable opportunity to occupy that school with a sound a school that is proven? They're growing by leaps and bounds, okay? They are hitting every mark you would expect a school to make in terms of the occupancy of these classrooms, the profits that they're bringing in. And so I just want to reiterate that there is still time, and I do not believe this is best for the town of Arundecoit. When you look at the cost to educate a child at $20,000 a year per child in the state of New York, if you had 100 people from Arundecoit, 100 students, that equates to $2 million a year of tax avoidance around the school taxes. $2 million a year. What are you going to bring in through putting this property back on the tax rolls? A fraction. So this is really, really the best move for Arundecoit, is to just, let's not move forward with what is potentially looking to happen here. It's still an appeal, and we really do feel strongly that this is what's best for this community on multiple levels, and we hope that you would re-engage with us in a discussion to bring St. John Bosco School to that property, because they have a lot to offer. Arundecoit needs another option for education. It will help our community as well. And what do? We've got a lot of people between the school and the church that give back. We help with food drives. We help with clothing drives, right? I've got people that I have recently become acquainted with who are now getting very involved in human trafficking. I mean, we are doing so much to support this community, and we need the town of Arundecoit to help us and get behind this so we can continue to help our neighbors. So I ask you to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in opposition to the application? Step right up.
Thank you. Linda Wilson, 98 Harvington Drive. I am just here primarily to ask the board to please look at Joel's his project altogether. I did go to the planning board meeting, and he didn't have all the information that was needed for that meeting, and that got postponed, and he said he would bring that back to the board at a later date. And how many times has he adjourned this meeting over the past year? And I agree with Christine that having St. John's Bosco and having it be a real school instead of an apartment complex is what's best for a residential neighborhood of families and children. So I please ask that you give us an option somehow to look at St. John's Bosco as an alternative to this project. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, then we're going to pause the public input portion. And at the request of the applicant, the matter's being adjourned to the October meeting. What date is that? October what? 7th?
Caught me off guard there.
6th?
7th.
7th.
October 7th is the next
Around
zoning
the
board
6th to the
meeting.
8th. Yeah, all right. So, as I indicated earlier, I'm expecting that the applicant will be here on October 6th to 7th to provide us with additional information, and the public hearing will remain open. I am going to reiterate what I reiterated, I don't know, whenever it was the next to the last time that the prior application was before us. I cannot read 177 pages, or whatever the amount is, of information that I received the afternoon or the day of the meeting. That's unrealistic to expect. So other people have indicated that you want to make submissions in terms of attendance figures and parking spaces. We welcome anything that you want to submit to us, but you have to be considerate of our time. So if the meeting is October 7th, then anything that you're going to submit, you want to submit that you want to be a part of the record and to be considered, is going to need to be into the town hall no later than noon on Friday, September 27th. That will give the board members 2 weekends to spend time reviewing the things that you want to submit to us instead of expecting us to get through it. We can't get through this volume of material and give it serious consideration, which I would assume is what you want us to give it, if we get it at the last minute. It's not possible for us to do that. And you've brought up a lot of things, and you've referenced a lot of other information. There was some reference during the comments this evening to people who live in the neighborhood who don't know things about this application. You have to understand, our job is not to put out information. Our job is to receive information, balance it against the factors that Mr. Zoglin reviewed in his presentation, and come to a conclusion. There is nothing that prevents any of you from knocking on the doors and saying, do you know what this is going, do you know what the green space is going to be? Do you know what the parking is going to be? You can do that. That is not our function, but it is part of yours. So if you feel that people in your community and people who share your views on this aren't getting the information, get it to them. Get it to them somehow. The code requires us to send notices of public hearings to a certain distance from the location of the property. We comply with that. If it's, I'm not sure if it's 200 yards, 200 feet. So if someone's 210 feet, they're not going to get a card from us because they're outside of that. But there's nothing that says you can't go to somebody 500 feet and say, hey, do you know about this? Just don't invite too many people to come on October 7th because it's going to be a long night, I suspect. And we also, most of us, get up in the morning and go to work too. And we don't function well on only a few hours sleep. So I appreciate you all coming tonight. I apologize. Well, I'm not going to apologize. It's unfortunate that the developer adjourned it at the very last minute. I will make reference to one comment that was made. This is the first adjournment of this application. I know that there were adjournments in the past on other applications, but on this application, that's the first one. Hopefully, there won't be another one. So if you could also, Michelle, make sure that the developer knows about the noon on the September 27th deadline.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right. We're going to, as I said, we're pausing the hearing with respect to this application at this point. The board is going to be in recess until 8:25. So, Mr. Jackson, you waited and stayed with us. All right, so we're going to take your application first, because you're also first on our agenda. So we are following our rules. All right, so the first application for us to consider is the application pertaining to 419 Whipple Lane. This is a type 2 action for seeker purposes. Does anyone wish to make a motion with respect to this application?
I'll make a motion that we approve the application as presented for the following 5 factors. Possible change to the neighborhood character. It's in the backyard. It's been there for 20 years. Alternatives that require a variance, it would be a really odd-shaped deck to be put up. And it's actually moving in a little more than it was. It's not a substantial request. I don't think it'll have an effect on physical or environmental conditions. Is a situation self-created? In a way, yes, but the land was built that way, going around the street, going in a circle, which makes that lot a little contoured to go there. So that's all I have to say.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 6 votes in favor.
My apologies, sir, but did you mention seeker?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
type 2 action for
I
seeker
missed it.
purposes.
Sorry, thank
I
you.
went by it quick. There's no opposed. There's no abstentions. There are 2 members of the board who are absent. And all right, and the next and final application for consideration tonight is the application pertaining to 1146 Titus Avenue. This as well is a type 2 seeker for seeker purposes, type 2 action. Someone wish to make a motion with respect to this application?
I'll move that we approve it. With the following findings, I don't believe it's going to impact the character of the neighborhood since there's already been a sign there for many years. Lost my cheat sheet. What are the other things? It's not going to have an adverse environmental impact. Gotta bear with me.
Character of the neighborhood.
Yeah, there are.
Alternatives that don't require a variance,
Yeah,
substantiality of the request.
Removing the sign or not having a sign up there, it would be problematic. That the existing sign is difficult to see or define. There are many other signs in the neighborhood, so I don't believe that's a issue. Still searching for my cheat sheet.
Substantiality of the request.
Oh, yeah, it's only gonna be an increase of 5 square feet on a sign, so it's not a substantial variance. And obviously not doing a variance, it's self-created, asking for it. But it is a business that requires to be identified in order to be viable. So based on that,
Is there a second?
Second.
Who was that? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 6 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions. 2 members of the board are absent. And the only other matter on the agenda tonight has been adjourned at the applicant's request to our October 7th meeting at least. All right, is there a motion to adjourn? Unless, does anybody have any other business to come before the board this evening? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? There's only 6 people who can vote to adjourn, and they all voted to adjourn.